All right, let's jump right into Daniel chapter 9. This is one of those moments in the story where everything is about to change. But what's so fascinating is that the thing that sets it all in motion isn't a crazy vision of beasts or empires. Nope, it's a prayer. A really powerful, desperate prayer from an old man who realizes something is just deeply wrong. So here's the central puzzle that gets this whole thing started. Just imagine you've been waiting 70 years for a promise to come true. The exact date arrives, the empire that's been oppressing you gets conquered, and then crickets. Nothing happens. That is the exact situation Daniel finds himself in, and it's what leads him to pray one of the most incredible prayers in the entire Old Testament. Okay, so to really get why Daniel is so worked up, we have to understand the very specific moment in time he's living in. It's this amazing intersection of history and prophecy. Now, check out this timeline, because this is where the math gets really interesting. Daniel knows the prophecies of Jeremiah like the back of his hand. He knows Jeremiah said 70 years of captivity, and then boom, God would punish Babylon. So Daniel's looking at the calendar. He watches Babylon fall in 539 BC, and he realizes the clock just ran out. The time is now. I mean, from a political point of view, everything's in place, right? The big bad Babylonian empire is gone. The new guys are about to let the Jewish people go home. The door is theoretically wide open for this glorious restoration they've all been dreaming of. And yet, there's just silence. And this silence, this nothing, is what leads Daniel to this huge insight. It's not some symbolic vision this time. It's more like a revelation that he gets from just hitting the books, from studying. You gotta picture this. Daniel is an old man now. He spent his entire life serving in the courts of foreign kings, and here he is, just poring over these ancient scrolls. He's not just reading, he's searching, digging, trying to figure out why God's promise seems to be stalled. And right here, in his own words, is his aha moment. He sees it, right there in black and white in the book of Jeremiah. It's been 70 years. The desolation is supposed to be over. For him, this isn't just some vague hope. It's a specific, time-stamped prophecy. So you can feel the question just burning in his mind, right? The political stuff has happened, the dates line up, but the spiritual reality hasn't budged. Why hasn't God acted? What piece of the puzzle is everyone missing? And then it hits him. This is the whole key. Daniel realizes that prophecy isn't just about dates on a calendar. The prophets had also laid out a condition: confession. He understands that for God to restore his people have to actually turn back to him. And they haven't. So that realization is what triggers this prayer. And he doesn't just pray for himself. No, he steps up to confess on behalf of the entire nation, past and present. And he just unleashes this rapid-fire confession. In the original Hebrew, it's 4 distinct, punchy words. This isn't just him being repetitive, it's him being comprehensive. It's like he's saying, think of any possible way to mess up. Yeah, we did that. There is no corner of our failure left unconfessed. This contrast right here is the absolute backbone of his prayer. He draws this stark line in the sand. God, you are completely right. You are merciful. You are just. Us? Well, the only thing we can possibly claim is our open shame. It's a public, undeniable guilt. There's no negotiating, no excuse-making, just shame. And he makes it crystal clear that this guilt is universal. It wasn't just one bad generation or a few corrupt leaders. Nope, it's everybody. The kings who led them astray, the regular people who followed, those still in the homeland, and those scattered across the empire. Nobody gets a pass. So as Daniel's building this incredible confession, one central theme just keeps popping up again and again, and it's what holds the entire prayer together. The key word here is Shema. In Hebrew, this word is a huge deal. It doesn't just mean to passively hear a sound. It means to listen with the intention to obey. It's at the very heart of Israel's relationship with God. And Daniel's entire confession boils down to their catastrophic failure to do this one thing. Now check this out, because the prayer itself is structured like a brilliant piece of poetry. It's a literary device called a chiasm. He starts and ends with the problem: we did not listen. He surrounds that with statements about God's good character. But right at the very center, the dead center of the whole thing, is the point he wants to hammer home. To us is open shame. It's the undeniable truth they have to face. And then he makes this absolutely shocking declaration. I mean, for generations, the worst-case scenario, the ultimate example of a city destroyed for its sin, was Sodom and Gomorrah. Daniel says, forget them. He says Jerusalem's destruction was so bad, it's now the new benchmark for divine judgment. That is a breathtaking admission of guilt. So, after all that, after this total, complete confession, where do you even go from there? Where is the hope? Well, the prayer now makes this dramatic shift. Daniel stops talking about what the people have done and starts talking about who God is.
And this is absolutely crucial. Daniel knows they don't deserve a thing. They have zero moral high ground to stand on. So he appeals to the only thing he can: God's own reputation. He's basically saying, God, your name, your honor is tied to this city and these people. Your reputation is at stake here.
And his prayer just explodes into these short, urgent, staccato requests. He's desperately pleading for God to do the very thing his people failed to do, to listen.
No long argument, no excuses, just a direct plea for the mercy that he knows is at the core of God's character.
This is the climax of his plea. Don't wait, don't delay. The situation is desperate. Act now, not because we're worthy, but because of who you are. And this quote right here, this captures the entire foundation for his hope. It's not about their righteousness. He's already established they have none. It's all about God's great mercy and his own name. Any hope for restoration depends entirely on the character of God, not the conduct of his people.
And this is where it gets absolutely mind-bending. Daniel is praying for the restoration of one city, Jerusalem. But the angel Gabriel shows up with an answer that goes so far beyond that. He lays out a timeline not of 70 years, but of 490 years that would redefine the future for his people and maybe for the entire world. But, well, that's a story for another time.